the clutch games. So pretty interesting stuff. So here Magnus Carlsen plays as white. So let's see what happened on the board. Magnus opens with d4. We have knight on f6 and now knight c3. Knight c3 by Magnus Carlsen, and actually this move was played a couple of times by Magnus Carlsen in the past. It was invented or maybe reinvented by Badur Jobava, because Badur didn't want to, learn all the theory, so he wanted to create his own systems. We have d5 and now bishop f4, which is, unofficially called London Jobava system. This is a London system with the bishop on f4 and knight c3, Jobava. So it was actually a couple of videos which, explaining some courses lately, and this is quite interesting. The main idea is play against c7, okay, with the knight, and there are quite complicated lines there. Very venomous position, and let's see how Magnus Carlsen plays that. We have e6, e3, and now bishop on b4, pinning that knight. And in this position there are actually two moves for white. Bishop on d3 is one of the moves, and Jeffrey Xiong faced that already 1 year ago against Daniel Naroditsky. The game ended in a draw. However, Magnus goes for knight on e2. Knight on e2 also was played by Badur Jobava, also by Richard Rapport from Hungary, just another, young promising talent. So definitely this is known move. We have castle by Jeffrey Xiong, and now a3, kicking the bishop. And bishop have to do something. Exchanging for the knight is not the greatest idea, and it was never played in the top level. Bishop on d6 is very, very interesting. Now this bishop of course cannot take it. I mean can, but Black would enjoy this powerful pawn center where e5, with the support of the pawn, could be pushed in the right moment. So this was one of the way. However, Xiong decided for bishop on e7, and here Magnus shocked everybody, because how to treat that position? So far the players try something like knight on g3. That was one try, probably not the best as it's blocking the bishop. Also h4, this was tried. g4 also was tried. Rook on g1, supporting g4, that was also tried. Even queen on d2 with the idea of the castle on the long side. So all of these were tried. Even knight on c1, trying to find some square for this knight, as this is problematic, and this knight can then jump to d3, which looks pretty logical. However, Magnus shocks everybody and he played knight on g1, okay? Of course, this knight, in Magnus' opinion, belongs to f3. So we have c5, knight on f3, and now knight h5, attacking this London bishop, and now d takes on c5, knight on f4. First, e takes on f4, and only now bishop on c5. And now look at the position. This pawn definitely is a weakness. Black have a very nice center, but this pawn, is this a weakness? If it can be pushed to f5, it can be pretty annoying, okay? It can be pretty annoying there. So how to do that? Bishop on d3, this was played by Magnus Carlsen, and now f5 is a problem, okay? Because this pawn cannot be pushed because knight controls e5. So g6 by Jeffrey Xiong, and here is the problem, because now the position of king is weakened. So Magnus Carlsen immediately strike with h4, and now the engine recommends queen on b6. This is the engine move, queen on b6, simple threat, attacking f2 and attacking b2, and it makes quite some sense, because now, for example, after queen on d2, defending, then queen b2, and the king have to do something. And if white want to keep, continue the attack on the king side, then the king have to move to e2. The queen can be trapped, so queen on b6, and the game can continue. Black won one pawn, and the king is in the center. So black have quite some possibilities of continuing the game this way. If black tries something like h5, it would not work well because g4, okay? And here is the problem. G takes on h5 is a threat, so h takes on g4, knight e5, Now queen attacks on g4, you already see that that's very, very dangerous. It cannot be protected because then g6 is hanging, so a very bad position. So definitely h5 is not the move. However, Jeffrey Chong just goes with development. What can go wrong? We have knight on c6 and now h5. Queen on f6, bringing the queen closer to the defense, also attacking f4, but now queen on d2, defending the pawn but also preparing the castle. And here is the critical moment of the game. What black should play? There are no really great moves. It would be good, you know, to catch the king still in the center. How to do that? With, for example, knight on d4, trying to exchange these knights, maybe triple the knights on the f file, but now knight h2, maybe queen on h4, but white can simply castle and then continue the game, okay? So not really this way. What Jeffrey Chong try is e5, e5. The problem in this move is he just hanged the d5 pawn. If this pawn is not hanging, then this would be very, very serious threat. However, definitely it's hanging, so Magnus immediately strikes on d5, and now queen has to be moved, so queen on d6. We have bishop on c4 defending. Now the knight is defended twice. And I would like to just show you how dangerous the position is and what are the ideas, you know, behind all of these moves. Once you know these lines, you will understand what's going on in this game. So the best move in the position, which was not played by Jeffrey Chong, was bishop on e6. Bishop on e6, attacking this dangerous knight, developing the bishop, connect the rooks. It looks like pretty good move. However, look how dangerous this attack can be. Now h takes on g6, and if black decide for h takes on g6, then f5 with the attack on this bishop, but also queen h6 with the mating ideas is coming, so you cannot just move the bishop. So f5 making some, you know, escaping space, but then f takes on g6 and saying, okay, I don't care about your bishop, but your king has to stay there. Queen on d7, defending the 7th rank, also doesn't work, because actually feel free to pause this video and find the winning forced mating idea for white. Okay, this is how serious this position is, while I enjoy my cup of tea. Okay, ready? I know this is the sideline, but look at this. Rook h8. This is the move we are looking for, or knight on e7. Both of the moves works as a charm. They can be played, you know, in different order, but let's see the idea. Rook h8, so king on h8, and now queen h6. The only move is king g8, and now knight e7. Knight e7 could be played first. And now this is check, so the queen can take or the knight can take. If knight takes, then of course we have a checkmate. And if queen takes, then bishop e6, okay? And now again, this is check. You cannot take it because the checkmate. And if you take with the rook, it's still a checkmate. Queen h7, okay? The rook is pinned and this is a checkmate. So as you see, after h takes on g6 is pretty dangerous. F takes on g6 looks slightly better, but look at this bishop. This bishop has now open diagonal, so it's, you know, extra danger. What white have to do here is just castle, calmly castle, and now look at this, attacking the queen this way, and there are a lot of ideas with knight on f6. So e takes on f4, of course, is always good in this position, because queen h6 is still possible after pushing f5, or even f takes on e5 with attack on the queen. So let's say e takes on f4 is, you know, a great move. It is. However, queen c3 now, and what to do now? There is a new diagonal, and now if bishop on d5, because this knight is coming to f6 with check anyway, okay, and discovered attack on the queen. So something about that. Bishop d5 doesn't work because bishop d5, and look at this, This is why it's so dangerous. You have to, you know, give up your queen, and if you don't, then still you have to do, okay? Your queen gonna be lost. So what else? The queen cannot move, and this is still a threat, okay? If queen moves to b8, this is the only square, because other squares are controlled by the knight or by the rook still on this open d file. So if queen on b8, it still doesn't work, because knight f6 and now king f7. If you try to run with the king, this is a checkmate, instant checkmate, so cannot play that. Rook f6 also doesn't work, because queen on f6, and now your bishop is under attack. You cannot really defend it, as this bishop is pinned. And also, if you take the bishop, which looks like, okay, pretty sensible, then again we have a tactic, rook h7, and now what to play next? King h7. This is just a checkmate, okay? And then you cannot do anything about that. So queen on b8 also doesn't work, and if you try to run with the king on f7, then still rook h7, you are just under attack, okay? You have to move with the king, and you're gonna lose the queen, okay? So as you see, this attack is very dangerous, and you cannot even take this pawn. You're gonna lose the game. And if you attack first the knight, which is, you know, very logical conclusion of after all of this what you've seen, so bishop takes on d5, f5, still the same on the board, queen h6, and you can try to prevent, but then your bishop is hanging, so white gonna get back the material and attack your bishop. So if you actually move the bishop to b6, then again rook h7. And what to play next? If you play something like queen on f5, then g takes on f7, and this pawn is defended 3 times. The rook is undefended, but you cannot take it because bishop on d3, pinning the queen, okay, and winning the queen. So rook a on d8 maybe, kicking the queen, and of course queen can move to e4 and the game can continue, but white wins by many ways. Even queen on f7 is winning. Okay, this is the last move you would expect, but rook on f7, rook f7, and your queen is actually trapped. If you try to escape with the queen, as you see, this is all covered by the knight. If you try to escape, then the problem is rook h7 comes with check, and after king on f8, g7, okay, and yeah, you cannot do anything. You have check, you cannot move here, so king on e8, just create the queen, and then queen g6 and wins the game, okay? So you would have to play queen on f7, and still simply g takes on f7, king g7, now knight on g5. There are a lot of threats, still a lot of threats. So for example, rook on h8, castle, and 4 extra pawns, not ideal pawns, but this pawn is nearly advanced. You know, the knight can jump to e6 and advance, so definitely easy win for white. So as you see, all of these ideas after bishop on e6, which is recommended by the engine, are losing. What Jeffrey Xiong played is b5, okay, deflecting the bishop, but Magnus Carlsen said this bishop stays on this diagonal. Bobby Fischer like this bishop on this diagonal. I also love this bishop on this diagonal. This bishop just belongs here, so let's stay on this diagonal. We have e takes on f4. The reason you already know, as I show you these lines. So queen h6, you know, followed with the h takes on g5 would be deadly, and now simply castle, okay, castle. We have b4 by Jeffrey Xiong. He tries to find some counterplay on the queen side. However, now Magnus starts the attack. H takes on g6, h takes on g6, and now knight g5. And can you find the idea what's the continuation here? How would you continue the attack? What is the idea? Knight on g5. What can be the idea? Not easy to find, but this knight goes to g5 to make the maneuver to e4 and to f6, okay, and that would be just deadly, because you know, rook on h7, that would be a checkmate. So we have bishop on f5 now, preventing that. knight cannot go on e4. And here Magnus Carlsen actually missed the winning continuation because he was focused on you know, reaching the f6 square, which is also a good plan and winning plan. However, he missed g4. G4, very, very powerful move because the bishop is under attack. Okay, and if bishop is moved, then he can continue, of course, with the attack on the queen and move to f6. And if bishop is not moved, for example, b takes on a3, then queen c3 with the mating ideas, and after exchanging how many pieces possible, take the bishop and win the game. Okay, this is just, you know, extra bishop, extra piece, and the king is still under attack, you know, in the attacking zone. So g4 could be pretty good. And of course, after g4, f takes on g3, you could ask what would happen. The problem is knight on e4 is still on the board, and the queen is under attack. Okay, if you take it, you're just gonna be checkmated, queen h6, and you cannot do anything about that. Okay, queen h7 or queen h8, you cannot defend, you know, against both of the checkmates. And if you play something like queen on e5 on this diagonal, then still queen on h6, and now queen g7, and it seems like you save the day, but knight here on f6, and you have no choice. This is also checkmate. So g4 was missed by Magnus Carlsen. As I said, knight on h7 with the idea of knight on f6, that was played by Magnus Carlsen. Jeffrey Chong moves the rook as is under attack, so rook f on d8, knight h on f6, and now king on f8. Rook on h8, now king on g7. Look at these knights. These knights actually controlling very important squares. Also, this pawn cannot move, so the king is stuck over there. Okay, and now the knight's doing a really great job, and the rook's gonna join and checkmate over there. So king on g7, now rook on h7, king on f8. And after rook d on h1, Jeffrey Chong resigned the game. However, he could try, you know, a couple of more moves. For example, g5. g5, making a space for the king, so, you know, the rooks cannot just checkmate over there. And also, bishop controls h7, okay? So it's slightly more difficult, but it's still winning for white. Rook h8, king g7, and still you know, rook to h7 from the first rank. Bishop on h7, rook on h7, and now after king on g6 we have a checkmate, so that's not the greatest move. And if you play king on f8, then still queen d3, and the idea is of moving the rook to h8 and checkmate on h7. Okay, so for example, if you play something like knight on e5 with the attack on the queen, there is of course a checkmate here. Okay, if you play queen on f6, it also doesn't save you, because after knight on f6 and rook on d3, yes, you lose this queen. However, rook f7, this is a checkmate, because this bishop, as I said, this is Bobby Fischer bishop, and it's very, very powerful here. So after knight on f6, of course, a rook cannot take the queen. What else to play? Knight e5, defending this also doesn't work. Queen f5, queen f5. The idea is to attack this knight. Okay, you cannot defend it because you're gonna be checkmated again. And if you try rook on d7, okay, defend it, then rook h8 with check. King g7, of course, is knight h5 with check. King h8, now queen f6, you already should see. This is a checkmate, and if your king moved to e7, then checkmate is even faster, you know, queen on e5, and this is a checkmate. I'm not sure if Jeffrey Chong saw all of that, because it looks like pretty complicated still. You know, g5, it looks like this bishop, you know, could control h7. However, Jeffrey Chong resigned. Maybe he thought, okay, I'm gonna get checkmated, I cannot do anything. But he still had the 3 minutes. He could try, you know, a couple of more moves. Okay, so what happened next? Magnus Carlsen actually